Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. New start time, Thursday mornings, 9 a.m. If you're here, you know. If you're not here yet and you're watching later, hey, 9 a.m. Thursdays now. Thursdays and Mondays, 9 a.m. Sam, how's it going?
Bright and early, 9 a.m. We're a 9 a.m. show now.
We're a 9 a.m. show now. Maybe even into the regular season, other than Monday morning. Got to go early. Got to do the 7 a.m.s. But we'll see. We'll see what happens going forward. We'll see how much you like it at 9 a.m. here. Today we're doing breakout players for all 32 teams. But if you have not watched Monday's episode with Zach Robinson, sometimes when you get the interview with the coach, it's like, well, I'm not a Falcons fan. I don't need to hear from Zach. But for all 32 fan bases, good discussion. Got to see me one-on-one with Sam playing receiver. A lot of good information on that show, no matter what team you're a fan of.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I mean, obviously Zach used to work with us, used to be on the show as well. So it was fun catching up, fun hearing him talk through his process. You know, it always feels from the outside like it's easy. You just call plays. You just he walked us through some of how he does things.
All right, so today, 32 breakout players, one per team. We'll go team by team through here. What's the criteria here, Sam? It's our show. We can do whatever we want. So explain your thought process here, picking breakout players.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of varies by team. You know, some teams it's pretty easy. You can identify a clear, happy, nice breakout player that fits, everybody's criteria, the kind of standard. He's been in the league for a year or two, and now's the year, right? We tend to imagine in our heads, third-year breakout, guy that's kind of gone around the first couple of years, hasn't done much, and then boom, year three, breakout, now he's a star. There's some teams that have that guy, and it's easy. There are other teams that guy does not exist on the roster, right? There's nobody that you could rationally point to and say, year three, he's ready, he's poised. And so there, you have to get a bit more creative. So at that point, I think the goalposts move. And I don't like rookie breakouts because I think that kind of cheats a little bit. There are some teams where I've had to find a rookie breakout. And then there are other teams where I literally can't find any sensible breakout candidate whatsoever, and we'll get to those and talk them through. So, it's a fluid criteria.
Yeah, it's whatever we want. So when when these get posted on social media and somebody responds and says, that's not a breakout player, he's already this or already that, doesn't matter. We can create whatever criteria. I even put in here players who are already good, who I think are going to, for me, it was just like, will this player be bringing his game to a new level? So the first one that we're going to talk about, guy's already good. You're going to say this dude broke out like 3 years ago. I'm going to say, well, he's going to become a star. He's not just going to be good. He's going from good to great. Sam, you read the book this offseason. We're going from good to great. So it could be whatever we want. It could be dudes who don't even show up to practice, but I still love them. And you wrote his name on the list for me. So I ran with it. I mean, that's what we're dealing with for criteria. The other thing that I realized that you'll notice across all the list here, I may have gone a little defensive line, defensive tackle heavy. I may have in my head said all of these defensive tackles are going to break out, particularly in year 2 and 3 here.
Yeah, apparently, looking at your list, it's going to be the great defensive tackle breakout of 2025, where people are going to talk about it for years. Remember that year where all the defensive tackles got good?
What was the year we had the year of the calf strain a couple years ago? This is going to be the year of the defensive tackle breakout. All right, you ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
All right, we're going team by team, starting in the AFC East. We're going to go Buffalo Bills. By the way, you and I both went into our own little bunker and came up with our own list. So there'll be some crossover here, but we tried to do this individually. So I'll start with you, your breakout player for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Javon Solomon, the edge rusher that they've got. I know, so they signed a ton of defensive linemen this offseason between free agency, between the draft. They've added an absolute boatload of bodies to this group. Solomon is a former 5th-round pick. So, he's going to be fighting against it to even just contribute, right? There's so much competition now on that defensive line. But remember, a couple of those guys they signed in free agency are going to be suspended for 6 games. Joey Bosa has been there for 6 minutes and has already pulled what has he done? A calf strain or something? He's already out indefinitely anyway. So, yes, there is theoretically an awful lot of competition when everybody is healthy and available. However, that's not going to be the case for at least 6 games. Solomon didn't play that much last year, got 100 and something snaps. But when he got given like a chunk of game time, as opposed to like, here's 2 snaps, here's 3 snaps, when he actually got given a concentration of snaps, he made an impact pretty much every game he was on the field. So I think there's a chance that Javon Solomon can carve himself a little bit of a niche and actually make a real impact on that defensive line for them.
Yeah, that's the classic player type, right? Small sample size of good play. I've got a couple of those players. Small sample size of good play that you just say, hey, give this guy double or triple the playing time next year, and we're going to see more from him.
And he's another one of those guys, with a sort of unusual body type, right? He brings something different to the table. He's low, built, like short, squat to the ground relative to a guy like, Gregory Rousseau, the big, long, prototypical defensive lineman. Like Solomon brings a sort of different trick to the table, and that's always useful, I think, when you're trying to carve yourself a little bit of a niche of playing time.
So I don't think I was a part of the breakout player show last year, but I could have sworn I already had this take, but I dusted it off again. My breakout player for the Bills is Greg Rousseau, Buffalo Bills edge rusher. And this is the guy that you would say, well, he's already arrived. He's already there. And I would describe him as a top 15-ish type of edge rusher over the last 3 years. I'm predicting a next step here for Rousseau. In part, Sam, because here's the other one you're going to hear between now and when the Patriots...
He's facing Will Campbell twice a year.
When the Patriots gets to face... he's going to become like Myles Garrett is to Dan Moore as Greg Rousseau is to Will Campbell. That's my prediction. So Rousseau's production is going to be off the charts just because of short-armed Will Campbell being in the division.
The difference between Gregory Rousseau making a Pro Bowl and not is how many times he plays Will Campbell over a season.
It could be. It could be. No, I really like Rousseau, man. Another guy that he came out with a low sample of plays coming off of the COVID year. He's continued to develop. And I think you mentioned all of the additions on the Bills defensive line. I think he benefits from that as he gets to just have a few more bodies around him. He's just tough to block, man. That length is difficult. They can move him around. And so I see a next step. I think he can go from top 15 to maybe top 10 as far as edge rushers go this season. So that's my breakout player for the Buffalo Bills. Let's go Miami Dolphins. Who do you have here for the Dolphins?
Let me just say for the record, I think Rousseau is stretching the definition of breakout player, whatever your definition is.
It's our show. Good to great.
All right. Miami Dolphins. I'm gonna go with the Dolphins. I'm gonna back their analysis that Patrick Paul, the left tackle, second-year player, was drafted for this exact reason, right? A developmental left tackle. The process was good. Developmental left tackle who needed some time, who wasn't going to be ready year one, brought in to essentially be a succession plan for Teron Armstead at left tackle. Now's his time.
I like that. I mean, you kind of liked him coming out anyway as a pass protector. We didn't get to see a ton of him last year, and so yeah, I think that's a fair. I considered Patrick Paul. I kind of went with the similar criteria for mine, which was Chop Robinson for the Dolphins, where I think he already had a pretty good rookie season. We talked about we reviewed all of the 2024 first rounders a couple of weeks ago. That was a fun show, just going player by player there. And when you watch Chop Robinson, he was a guy coming out who I thought had some struggles against the run, just played kind of small and undersized. That he doesn't have great length. He's the opposite of Greg Rousseau as far as body type goes. His juice off the edge as a pass rusher, though, absolutely played as a rookie. And when I went back and watched him from a run defense standpoint, I thought he played the run well, just didn't finish plays. He missed 9 tackles out of 24 attempts. So I think he was actually disruptive in the run game. So just finish some more plays this year, Chop Robinson. So I think there's just a next step to his game and has a chance to break out, really become one of the better pass rushers and all-around edge rushers in the league this year.
Yeah, I like Chop Robinson is a good breakout candidate, I think. I like him as I think he fits the standard definition of breakout player.
All right. Some questions about the audio. Are we doing all right here, audio-wise?
It's struggling from the sounds of it. I would suggest that each one of us in turn sequentially drop out and jump back in and then see if that fixes it. I can't do it both at the same time. Otherwise, there's no stream left. But if one of us does it and then the other one does it, maybe that'll
Everyone
fix it.
says it's, well, some people are saying everyone's saying refresh your YouTube and you should be okay. That was the suggestion. Some people said it was fixed. Let's see. People are saying it's okay now.
Okay. Well, refresh your streams and then it should be good to go.
All right, let's go. New England Patriots breakout player. Do you have a breakout for New England?
I struggle with the Patriots one. I kind of want to go with Jalen Polk on the basis that a lot of people liked him as a prospect. I liked him, a reasonable amount. He was a weird guy where I kind of spotted him just watching college football games, seeing Washington, the run they went on. You're like, Jalen Polk looks pretty useful. And then the more I actually dove into the receiving class, the more it was like, all right, I don't like him that much. He was, I sort of like, but don't love. And I think a lot of people were kind of like that. Like they initially first viewing like, oh, I quite like this guy. And then actually the more you watched, you cooled on it a little bit. The Patriots drafted him really quite high. So you're sort of like, well, maybe he's going to be really good. And then had one of the worst rookie receiver seasons anybody's ever had. So it was so bad that it like scares you away from even contemplating a potential second-year breakout. If I was forced to try and find somebody for the Patriots, it would be him, but I'm not at all confident in that.
Yeah, it's an interesting offseason for them because most of the impact players that they brought in a lot of supposed impact players, but they're all free agents like Milton Williams, Carlton Davis, or rookies, right? So if you were trying to avoid rookies, it would be difficult. One of the names that came to mind under the same idea that I used Rousseau was maybe Christian Gonzalez. You get a year 3 of Christian Gonzalez. That's not the guy that I officially went with, but maybe seeing him go from good to great, maybe him going to that next level on the outside of corner, especially with Carlton Davis on the other side. But I went with Demario Douglas, the slot receiver. I think he's just been really dependable during his couple of years in New England. You've got Josh McDaniels coming in, calling plays. We know McDaniels he was at the forefront of the Wes Welker role and having Julian Edelman and, working with those slot receivers. And who knows, with Stephon Diggs on a boat somewhere doing whatever he's doing, there might be more targets to go around. You never know. So Stephon Diggs supposedly going to come in and be the one, and Mac Hollins, but keep an eye on Demario Douglas. I still think Drake May also does his best work in the middle of the field where Demario Douglas operates. So I really like, there was a few times last year where it looked like they were going to click and take off. I think they have a chance to do that with Josh McDaniels calling the plays now.
The other obvious potential one is if, the offensive line is better, if the receiving core is better, Drake May could be the breakout guy this year. Like if the situation around him is significantly better, Drake May could have a breakout.
Yeah, I think I didn't pick any quarterbacks here, but yeah, I think my own mentality was to go away from quarterback. But you could say JJ McCarthy, Drake May, Michael Penix, a lot of the year 2 type of quarterbacks, absolutely in the mix for this breakout player option. Let's go round out the AFC East here with the New York Jets, Sam.
I think, again, back to the offensive line, I think Olu Fashanu has a breakout year this year. The guy at left tackle, I think, is an outstanding pass protector. Run blocking, maybe a bit of a work in progress and maybe the weaker side of his game, but there are top tackles in the NFL for whom that's the case as well. I don't think that'll hold him back. I think Fashanu this year sort of shows how good of a pass blocking left tackle he can be, which I think will be one of the better ones in the NFL.
Yeah, I really like the Fashanu pick. When I started to put my list together, I accidentally saw a couple of your picks, so I tried to go the other way because Fashanu makes a lot of sense. In addition to finally settling in at left tackle late last season, he did look good for a stretch of play. I think he's in line to have a really good year as the full-time left tackle. I went with a defensive tackle, Sam. Leonard Taylor III in year 2 here, undrafted free agent. We'll see if he continues to get another opportunity. I have some picks here where I could look stupid, right? I have a few picks for breakout players where things might not go my way, but we're going to list them anyway.
Yeah, you went and did some research, some historical analysis of our picks for a breakout player of the year. This is obviously not the first time we've covered this topic in an offseason. We have a pretty terrible track record based off the last couple of years.
I sent you a couple images. I just sent you a couple screenshots from 2 years ago. That's all. And look,
you sent one from last year where me and Trevor each had 5 guys. Yeah. I think we were 0 for 10 on those 5 guys. Like none of them broke out between the two of us. And then you found some other screenshots from the year before where it was you and I. and that didn't have a great track record either. So I don't look. It's not a complete analysis by any means, but certainly what you show me so far is bad.
It's just like draft hit rates, though. You got to know what the base rate is. You have to know what the baseline is. So if we're projecting breakouts, we're certainly not expecting to be 80% here. So I don't know what the baseline is out of 32 teams. If we hit 8, if we hit 25%, are we good? I don't know. But Leonard Taylor, guy I really liked coming out of Miami, went undrafted. I think that was more off-field concerns than on-field. What I liked out of Miami was his ability to disrupt and penetrate and create disruptive plays in the backfield. He showed a lot of that as a rookie on 200-plus snaps. Can he do that in year 2? Will he be a part of the rotation in year 2 with a new regime? I don't know. He still struggles holding the point like a lot of 300-poundish defensive tackles, but, man, he could be really disruptive, still like his game. And I think depth chart-wise, he should have opportunities. I'm only saying, hey, with new coaching staff and everything, will he get the opportunity? But I like him as a breakout candidate. All right, let's go NFC East now, starting with the Dallas Cowboys here, Sam.
Dallas Cowboys, I think the obvious name is Cooper Beebe. Last year, obviously, they had a couple of rookie offensive linemen they needed to come in and start right away. Tyler Guyton was the big one in terms of the highest draft capital allocated to him, the highest profile because of the position and because of who he was replacing, coming in and having to beat Tyron Smith effectively from day one. But Cooper Beebe had to come in and start at center, which is not an easy thing to do in today's NFL. Even good centers tend to start at guard. You don't see many young players start right away at center because it's hard. It's difficult. The mental ask as a center is really tough. Beebe played pretty well coming in at center. And that, remember, is another one of these guys who played a different position in college, coming in, playing at center. I thought looked pretty good from day one, acquitted himself well, was good in run blocking, not so great as a pass blocker, but not disastrous. I think year 2, Cooper Beebe could become a really, really good player.
I also took Cooper Beebe because of those reasons, right? You get a center that held his own as a rookie. And that's one of the trends that I went with some of the list here was offensive line years 2, 3, and 4 improvements, because that's what we see from that position. So the fact that he was solid as a rookie, I think there's more there for Beebe. He's really powerful, man. I mean, he had a rough workout, which I think shows up on tape sometimes, angles and his ability to get to the second level, his ability to adjust off stunts. That's one of the concerns I have, ironically, with the guy playing next to him now, Tyler Booker. That's going to be an interesting case study. You basically have 2 below average workout guards in Cooper Beebe and Tyler Booker. Beebe, of course, moved to center. They were guards in college, subpar workouts, but Beebe was an excellent overall player in college, and that translated to center right away. So I think there's more there. He is really powerful when he locks on, and I think there's just more to come there. The other name that I thought of was Marshawn Nealand, the edge rusher, second rounder out of Western Michigan. Him and Donovan Ezeraku, fighting for snaps opposite Micah Parsons, but I went with Beebe here for the Cowboys. So that's the first time we were on the same page as far as breakout player.
You didn't want to stir the pot and say Joe Milton?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, Joe Milton. I mean, Joe Milton might break out just from hype alone. I mean, the training camp hype, being in Dallas, right? Like every time Dak misses a throw and Milton hits like a cover 2 hole shot or something, might hear it.
I mean, the funny thing is, though, let's assume for a moment that the Joe Milton game that he played in, imagine if that was what he's actually going to be. If that's who Joe Milton can and will be in the NFL, this will become a competition at some point. Like if that's real, and the Joe Milton fans will be like, we told you this is there all the time, right? Like the big arm, the athleticism, it's insane. If that was a real level of what he can be, like we just goofed on the evaluation again, happens all the time, happened with Dak Prescott. Like if we just missed on Joe Milton and he put it all together in like an offseason, then he will actually be pressuring for that job. And all of a sudden Dallas will have a nightmare on their hands because they're stuck with Dak Prescott's contract for a while.
If it happened, I would describe it differently. Not even that you goofed on the evaluation. It's that we all evaluated the right thing, which was he throws the ball all over the place, but is crazy athletic with a cannon for an arm. And much like Josh Allen, if he figures it out and tidies up the footwork and everything, the potential is there. And he hit that lower range of outcomes. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, but
But like
if he
something,
did it,
the only
if he
reason
did
why
that in
I've
6
hyped it up,
months, if he did that in 6 months, we goofed on the evaluation. Like if that was within a sensible range of outcomes, he would have been a top 5 draft pick. He would have been Anthony Richardson, but he wasn't. So we goofed on the evaluation.
maybe. I don't know. I mean, the only reason why I've hyped him up a little bit is it looked different in August. It looked different in December, January, in that week 18 game. It just looked a little bit different, more consistent. And it was like, man, you just hit the high range of outcomes in most of what we saw between the preseason and one NFL game. So yeah, Joe Milton probably won't have the opportunity to break out, but yeah, nice candidate. You're right to stir the pot. Let's go New York Giants. Who do you have for the Giants breaking out?
Giants are tough because they have a lot of those kind of potential guys for year 2, but it's because all of the rookies almost already broke out. Like all of the guys from basically the entire draft class from last year, I thought looked really good in year 1. So you could you're almost have an embarrassment of riches. You can either say any of those guys, or you can say all of them already broke out. I ended up going with Tyler Nubin, the safety. It's top of the second round or high-end second round pick from a year ago. Again, I thought he looked pretty good year 1, but I think year 2 is where we're going to see him take a step forward and become a really, really good player. Really powerful run defender. Like he's got size. He's got instincts as well. You can see him understanding his role, coming down, fitting against the run really well. Coverage, I wasn't as good year 1, but I think those instincts are there as well based off his college tape. So if that's the step that he's able to take year 2, bring his coverage up to the same level as run defense was right away, they could have a really good safety.
Yeah, I went with last year's draft class as well. I went Theo Johnson, tight end out of Penn State. See the chat talking him up. I went back and watched a lot of Theo Johnson to prepare for this, just to refresh. And he looked awful early in the season. Everything looked bad. I mean, he's big and athletic, but you could almost see the wheels turning with him coming out of routes, trying to catch the ball. The run blocking was terrible, just awful. But it got better. So it got better through the season. That was the thing that I really liked. So an athletic, big-bodied tight end, and he showed enough flashes last year running the seam, showing that athleticism. And he kind of broke out Thanksgiving against Dallas before Liz Frank injury ended his season. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see the rest of the second half of Theo Johnson's season. But right around week 8, 9, 10, whatever that was, he just looked more comfortable, which is the easy narrative for rookies, Sam, right? They're thinking early on. They're not playing fast. That quote that we always hear. You could almost see that with Theo Johnson. So for an athletic, big body tight end, I think he makes sense. The injury, of course, coming back off of that is going to be key. But he just looked so much better in the second half of the season to me, and I expect him to carry that forward here. Let's go Philadelphia Eagles. I see we both have the same player here, Sam.
Yeah, went with Jalix Hunt. Such a fun story for him because he was one of these draft picks that pops up every now and again where they have obvious NFL caliber athleticism, NFL caliber tools, 6'4", 250 pounds long. But he was playing at a ridiculously low level of competition. Houston Christian College, 3rd round draft pick by the Eagles. And you're like, this is a massive project because the jump from where he was playing to where he's going to be playing at the NFL is huge. And then by the end of the season, in his rookie year, he's playing in a Super Bowl. He's the guy that's getting all the snaps that were earmarked for Bryce Huff. And instead, Bryce Huff is becoming a healthy scratch for this team who, despite being the kind of big free agent offseason acquisition. So at that level of development, you have to look at this and say, Jalix Hunt is going to be a real player next year. And arguably his 2 best games came in the final 2 games of the season in the conference championship and the Super Bowl. If that's his trajectory this year, he should be a force.
Yeah, I also went with Jalix Hunt because of that. I mean, much like Theo Johnson, it's kind of an easy narrative, right? We saw him not play a ton of snaps early on. Before you know it, he's an impact player, has his best 2 games at the end against the Commanders and the Chiefs in the title NFC title in the Super Bowl. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. it reminds me a little bit of when we're doing draft analysis and you say developmental player. And when I've said this before, right? You picture that and it's like, year 2 or 3, right? He'll figure it out at some point. And then if they do it in year 1, it just feels accelerated, right? For a guy that's coming from such a small school and has that fascinating background that you talked about. So if they've accelerated his development, he looks good for year 2. That was Reek Woolen a couple years ago coming out of UTSA with crazy workout, length at cornerback for Seattle, thinking, hey, by year 3, this guy could figure it out. And before you know it, it's like, kind of looks good already in week 1. It's accelerated development. I think we saw that from even though it was the end of the season, to get that type of production out of Jalix Hunt in year 1, I thought was incredible for the Eagles.
Well, so much of those guys, the problem with evaluating them is it's an unknown rather than a negative, right? So many snaps on his college tape were like, it's non-applicable. He was just running around a left tackle. Like the guy literally never touched him. He never had to even pull a move. He just was able to literally run the arc right around the corner of a left tackle, because like that's what happens when an NFL athlete goes up against a guy that won't be playing beyond that level of competition for the rest of his life, right? Effectively the future UPS drivers. So that rep is effectively irrelevant for NFL projection, other than the fact that he has NFL athleticism, which we already knew. Like you could get that just from the workout. But so those reps you basically have to throw out as these are meaningless, because you're going to need to do more than that to play at the NFL level. But that doesn't mean he can't. It just means that you don't know from that snap. And there's so many of those on his college tape, but it just sort of forms this incomplete picture, which is different than a complete picture from a guy where a lot of it is negative, right? And that it just makes it very difficult to project, because you can't either just look at it and say, well, because of that athleticism, he's going to be good, so let's give him the opportunity. It's just a total gamble.
Chad points out that you kind of take some shots at UPS drivers quite a bit, and I think you should probably apologize.
I don't disparage them. It's a very well-paid, well-compensated position. It's just not football.
Okay, just making sure. Just clarify. Nothing against UPS drivers. They just probably shouldn't be playing in the NFL, right? Like that's the only thing you're trying to.
I mean, I would say definitely shouldn't be playing in the NFL. Certainly not at the same time.
Just making sure. Washington Commanders to wrap up the NFC East.
Commanders I struggled with as well, because obviously Jaden Daniels already broken out. He was phenomenal as a rookie. You look at the rest of the team. Like they brought in veteran players. They've got established guys. Maybe you would look at somebody like Mike Sanderson and say if he could take that next step. I thought he's already impressed people. You need to figure out exactly where he's going to play based off the players around him. Whether he's going to go back to the slot, whether he's going to have to play outside, depending on the performance of a guy like Trey Amos or even Marshawn Lattimore. So I kind of struggled with finding a good one for Washington.
I did too. I just went with Johnny Newton. I thought that was because it's a defensive tackle. When in doubt, go to defensive tackle, Sam. That's what I did. Especially an undersized defensive tackle. And look, a lot of the undersized guys, and we've got a couple more on this list, they struggle. If you look at, say, the PFF grades for Newton early in the year, there's a lot of game grades in the 30s. I thought he struggled early on. I thought he struggled with his anchor. That's the sentence I was trying to finish there. The undersized, around 300-pounders struggle with their anchor. And those are the guys that you're expecting to penetrate and create disruption. But if they can't hold the point, they're basically liabilities in the run game. And I thought Newton got better as the year went on, so the trajectory was in the right spot. A lot of my analysis here also goes off priors. I liked him coming out of Illinois. We thought he was a fringe, or at least a first-round caliber player. He goes early second. Thought that was good value for Washington. So year 2 breakout for Johnny Newton.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed by how little impact he made as a rookie. Again, knowing that, you may struggle against the run, particularly for him. He's kind of a longer, undersized interior player. So, some guys, when they're 290 pounds, you're like, okay, but he's short, he's low to the ground. It's not necessarily a massive problem. But Newton's got some length to him and is under 300 pounds. And like that has the recipe for getting washed out against the run. But he really didn't even flash that much as a pass rusher. That's the bit that was kind of disappointing and a little bit concerning to me from his rookie season is if he had more flashes, we're like, okay, it's there. It's, maybe the run game is going to be a problem, but like he's going to cook as a pass rusher. He didn't really do that much as a rookie. And that I think definitely needs to get better year 2.
The question about why people think Johnny Newton is small in the chat, 6'2", 304 when he weighed in, combine or pro day combination. 6'2", 304, arm length under 33 inches. I mean, he's an undersized defensive tackle. Not unprecedented, right? There's a difference between unprecedented size, which would be like a Willie Lampkin, but undersized, right? Most defensive tackles are well above, 310 plus and longer than Newton. So he's working an uphill battle there.
Yeah, and that was kind of combine weight where combine weights are always they're fluid because some guys are trying to put on weight because their question mark is, well, he's too small. Some guys are trying to lose weight to run a fast 40. So they're kind of all over the place. Newton was one of those guys who was trying to show that he wasn't undersized and he could be heavy. He's listed at 295, I think. So like 304 was his combine weight. I don't know if that's real. And I would say there's a good chance he plays under 300 more than he plays above it.
AFC North is up next. Baltimore Ravens. Did you struggle with this one?
Yeah. Ravens are always that team where it always feels difficult to kind of identify true breakout candidates for them, because either you go with like a Dafe Owe for like the 5th straight year, every year is his year, or they've got a bunch of players that are already good. They've got a bunch of players that have already broken out, or these kind of established veterans that are getting any better. I don't know. I again struggled to figure out where you go with Baltimore.
I think Baltimore has the best for the 2nd straight year, just top to bottom depth, where you go up and down that roster in the starting 22 and you say there's not a whole lot of weaknesses there. I considered a Roger Rosengarten for a guy that had a really good, solid rookie season as a tackle. Does he take that next step forward? I went with Travis Jones because he's a defensive tackle. When in doubt, you go back to defensive tackle. There's a lull of defensive tackles for at least a team here, Sam. Don't worry. But Travis Jones heading into year 4. This is an interesting one because Nnamdi Madubuike had a breakout at a similar point in his career, kind of put the Ravens in a bind, not in a bind, but they put him in a decision point. Is Madubuike just a solid player, or is he a guy that is a top 10 to 15 caliber defensive tackle? They started to pay him like a top 10 defensive tackle. Travis Jones, as a former 3rd-round pick, heads into the 4th year of his contract. He's been good. He's been a good, dependable player. I think if at the time when he was drafted, we said, why take Jordan Davis at 13 when Travis Jones is available later? Not why take, but like, let's at least compare what you get in the 3rd round with a Travis Jones versus a Jordan Davis. And while Jordan Davis had more perceived upside, Jones has been just as maybe productive and dependable. So I think Jones also has a little bit more in the tank in a contract year. So that's what I'm banking on here. Travis Jones taking that next step, year 4, similar to a Madubuike. Are we going to be sitting here talking about Travis Jones getting paid next offseason for the Ravens?
Yeah, Rosengarten is an interesting one. I thought about him as well for right tackle. Part of it is like I want to at least believe the thing that I'm pitching is a possible outcome. It's possible for Rosengarten. I just don't really feel a huge upside in him. Like he could get a lot better, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
I considered Nate Wiggins too, with the way he played down the stretch.
I kind of thought he was already, he already was in the category of like already broken out to me.
All right, let's go Cincinnati. Is it Cincinnati Bengals? I'm on the wrong sheet. Yeah, Bengals. Bengals are up next.
Chris Jenkins Jr.
Defensive tackle.
2nd year defensive tackle. So he's a guy that missed a lot of last season, injured, or was dealing with an injury coming into the season. And Mike Tomlin talks about that all the time, the difficulty of jumping on a moving train, right? Once you're hurt to begin the year as a rookie, it's really hard to get on board with everybody, get up to speed while everyone else has already had that ramp up time and is good to go. I kind of feel like that's what happened with Chris Jenkins. Like he was hurt before the season and just never really got to the level where it felt like he was able to come in, be a really important playmaker for them on the defensive line, a disruptor. And that's what he's going to have to be. Like, I don't think he's going to be a consistent, dominant pass rushing force, but I think he can be a disruptive presence on that line against both the run and the pass, despite being not an undersized defensive tackle, but certainly not a massive presence. But I think we just didn't see that year one. I feel like now, year two, with a full offseason program, assuming he doesn't get hurt this time, we'll get to see more of what Chris Jenkins can do.
Yeah, I didn't go with Jenkins here, but obviously considered him. I'll tell you where I went in a second here. But yeah, I was a little disappointed in Jenkins, kind of like what you said about Newton. And we've been saying undersized defensive tackle because he's similar, right around 300 pounds. But he's got some length to him. I thought he was fantastic in the run game at Michigan by using his hands, and similar issues as far as anchor goes for a player that size. But I think the negatives really showed up quite a bit last year. But I still think there's potential there. It was enough of a concern that Cincinnati went and got TJ Slayton this offseason, made some investment at defensive tackle to try to get bigger. But I think if Jenkins can just be that disruptive presence, he has all the tools to take that next step. I didn't go there because you wrote Jermaine Burton for me in the spreadsheet. And who am I to argue if you're going to say Jermaine Burton? You mentioned a couple seconds ago, you kind of wanted to believe the breakout. I don't know that I don't really believe this, right? I mean, there's just too much.
Hype starting though again. We're back in Jermaine Burton season.
I made the statement last year that Romeo Doubs is the best August receiver of our lifetime because the August hype is through the roof. I mean, Jermaine Burton has a chance to challenge him, the August hype. And I'm a big part of that. I'm a big part of the August hype. I go to practice. They do let us into practice over there, which is great because they let us in. And so I can help the hype in August and in June, May and June, right? In OTAs. I can do that. We're all for that. I don't know if I completely buy in, though, that he's going to, show up to Friday practices this year.
Don't forget Brian Edwards as well for that August offseason champion deal.
Brian Edwards, if you put him in August or overtime, the guy was just incredible. That was
overtime TO. I wonder if we're on the June list for the Bengals automatically.
We should. I mean, historically,
as
it's ironic.
In our role as the Cincinnati Bugler or whatever we were, reporters.
It's just ironic that you could go through proper channels for games and they're like, no chance. You could just kind of show up to practice and say, I'm always here. And all right, great.
Well, practice,
there's a risk
to be fair, practice is just a wide open field, right?
True.
There's a fairly unlimited amount of space. Now, they seem to act like it's still a problem, but quite a lot of room to put everybody, right? Just go stand over there next to the grass. Like, don't bother people. There's a lot of space to put people. The problem, apparently, is that the press box is sufficiently tight on space that if you weren't writing for the Cincinnati Bugler in 1929, can't help you, right? It's just not. I'd love to, but the seats aren't there.
This is our year. This is our year for the Bengals. Man, social team made me look so old in that picture, too.
I don't know whether it's worse that you were aged significantly or that the age filter for me effectively did nothing and just put a waistcoat on me.
That's a good point. At least I can say, hey, look, something changed here in my complexion. Although my wife said you looked important. Looked like you should be listened to. Like you had some reporting that was worthy of I don't know, importance, I guess.
I mean, evidently there's power to just putting on a waistcoat.
All right, that's the Bengals. Cleveland Browns are up next here, Sam.
A big part of me wants to go with Jamari Thrash because I love that guy. And even going back, watching players for this year's draft kept popping Jamari Thrash tape of him like roasting cornerbacks and stuff. I'm like, man, that guy should be good. He's another one of these players. This drives me nuts every now and again where you're like, they don't work out in the NFL. And people talk about this all the time with your draft misses. What did you learn? What did you sort of evaluate wrong, or what did you not give enough credence for? Sometimes that's easy. You see what the problem was. You knew what the problem was at the time, and you didn't, appreciate it enough, or you see the problem after the fact. You're like, okay, I should have factored that in more. Sometimes guys are different, and you go back and you watch, and you literally can't work out why, right? Why was Vernon Hargreaves not good in the NFL? There is no reason. It makes no sense. Jamari Thrash is one of those guys. Like, you watch his tape. I do not understand why he's not good yet. Now, it was only year one. Maybe he'll be good this year. So a big part of me wanted to go with Jamari Thrash. But I ended up going with a safer route and went with Isaiah McGuire on the defensive line. He's quietly, I think, become pretty good already, opposite Myles Garrett, or along with Myles Garrett, obviously on the defensive line. They're I think relying on him a bit to make an impact, and he could easily become that kind of second threat for them.
Yeah, McGuire had an impressive season last year. And look, I think it's tough for us sometimes during the season to really get as granular at the player evaluation level. Certainly not the way we do with the draft, right? Because that's all we're focused on for a few months. But yeah, when you go back and look at McGuire's film, there's a lot to like there. By the way, I was watching some of the tackles in preparation for this over the last couple of weeks as well. And Myles Garrett, I mean, when you see how good he is, it's unbelievable. Like the stride. In my notes, I was writing about his stride length and how that's just a massive issue for people. I mean, Myles Garrett really does have it all. Anybody that's trying to disparage him at all for any reason because of sack totals or anything are missing the point. So, again, I'm watching tackles, and it's like you see all the attention to Myles Garrett, and he's still disrupting. But yeah, McGuire pops quite a bit just trying to watch tackle tape and watching a little bit of Myles Garrett. I went back to the defensive tackle well here on the defensive line. So I think the Browns are in an interesting spot for the defensive line. I'm going Michael Hall Jr., last year's second-round pick. It was their top pick from last year's draft. Another around 300-pounder. But he's a guy that does anchor pretty well, plays with violence, love his hand usage. I thought he was outstanding in the run game in a limited amount of time. I know our friend Mike Renner, pre-draft last year, was bringing up the fact that Hall, at his size, played nose tackle against Ohio State in the big game back in 2023, and that was a tape that Mike that really helped sell Renner on Michael Hall, and I thought he showed a lot of that last year. Run game disruption, pretty good as a pass rusher. Opportunities, we'll see what happens here with Mason Graham in there, but I think the Browns are getting that defensive line back on track here.
You said against Ohio State. Did you mean for Ohio State or against?
For Ohio State, sorry, okay. Against Michigan. Yeah, sorry. All the other Michigan. He's got Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham with him. Yeah, I was wondering why you had a face there because look, I
was trying to work out
what I say is correct.
I was trying to work out if you were meaning in a specific game or just for the team that you said against.
Against Ohio State at practice, he probably played. But yeah, for Ohio State against Michigan, playing nose tackle against this run-heavy attack and held his own. I really like the way he uses his hands and his length. I mean, he's got that undersized, low pad level power that shows up on the field. So 232 snaps last year for Michael Hall Jr. I think, get a increased workload here this year, even with Mason Graham there. I think we could see a breakout year from Michael Hall.
Cool.
Pittsburgh Steelers are up next to round out the AFC North.
I think the obvious one is Roman Wilson at wide receiver. Number one, they need him to now because they traded away George Pickens, and DK Metcalf is now the number one guy. They would really love for Roman Wilson to become that sort of secondary target for them. Number two, another guy who missed basically his rookie season, got injured by the time he got late in the year, back to the point where he could contribute. As Tomlin said, look, it's hard to jump on that moving train. And number three, like this, again, part of the priors, he was a good receiver. Like a lot of people liked him coming out. He tore up the Senior Bowl, was really impressive in an all-star setting. He should have been a guy to make an impact year one. And it sort of feels like that was just taken away from us for circumstances outside of his control. A lot of things are lining up for him to make a year two jump and break out.
Yeah, I considered Roman Wilson. I thought that was a good one. I think I liked him coming out. Same idea. Opportunities should be there. I also went with a Wilson, though. It's Peyton Wilson, same draft class. Linebacker out of NC State. Did some nice things as a rookie. The big question for him was the injuries coming out of NC State and being a little bit older. But he made some plays last year, man. And, that incredible interception against the Ravens, just stealing the ball out of midair. I mean, I think Wilson is just a really good overall player. And the Steelers have, for all the questions at quarterback the last couple of years, I think they've done such a nice job drafting in round 4. Peyton Wilson, Herbig a couple of years ago. This year, Jack Sawyer, maybe to continue that trend. I just think they've done a nice job drafting in the middle rounds or just beyond the first round. I think Roman Wilson has a chance to be another one of those guys as well. I think the Steelers drafts will eventually start to come good. And I like Peyton Wilson as a breakout this year.
And then obviously, if you're following our guy Pony, Andrew Filipponi, Mason Rudolph is about to become the new Sam Darnold / Geno Smith. So be ready for that.
Can we get Pony on here for his breakout prediction? Pony's the best.
I mean, I was telling you this yesterday. I'm trying to put myself in the kind of headspace where you can talk yourself into on the base of one practice, like a breakout from a random guy throwing against air 5 years or whatever into his career. Like how many years is more than that?
That's me watching Sam Bradford every year. Remember when we went to Eagles camp and I'm watching Sam Bradford right next to number 2 overall pick Carson Wentz that year, and Wentz had a really good arm, and I'm like, Bradford's got a tighter spiral, better ball, and then they traded him to Minnesota after the Bridgewater injury that year, and Bradford had a good couple. He had a couple good games there, but that's me. I could get hype after a little preseason throwing action.
The Darnold and Geno Smith, career arcs are going to supply power, so much hopium from people that just are predisposed for that kind of thought process. Like every guy for the next 5-10 years, if you like a quarterback and he has stank in the NFL since he got here, you are going to be powered by those two players breaking out, years into their career. You're going to be like, this is the year. I watched it in practice. That dude's got a cannon. It's all there. It's different this year. He's mentally dialed in. He's ready to go. Boom. This is his breakout season. And then
what were the podcasts saying? What were all the podcasts and Shouty show saying back in 2000? Maybe not the Shouty shows, but was everybody looking for the next Rich Gannon? When Rich Gannon breaks out with the Raiders under Gruden and wins an MVP and goes to a Super Bowl, like, oh, this guy's the next Rich Gannon, next Rich Gannon, next Rich Gannon. Can't always do that. All right, let's go NFC North now, starting with the Detroit Lions here, Sam. Who do you have breaking out for the Lions?
Terrion Arnold, the cornerback who, was a high pick for them year one, struggled, I thought, quite a bit year one. On the other hand, he was in a really difficult situation, right? Like it kind of cuts both ways. On the one hand, it was a relatively simple defensive scheme, right? Just go out there and play man coverage. On the other hand, that's basically the hardest thing to do in the NFL as a corner, right? There's a reason why zone is sort of frowned upon or looked down upon as an easier set. It is easier to play. The hardest thing to do is to go out there and say, all right, lock up Justin Jefferson one-on-one, right? That's really, really hard to do. It's simple. You don't have to think about it much, but it's incredibly difficult. So that's sort of a double-edged sword is what I'm saying. On the one hand, it was the most difficult assignment you could have. On the other hand, it was pretty mentally not that taxing for him to go out there. But overall, I thought he did struggle a bit. On the other hand, I just think his, the movement skills that we saw were still there. Like the stuff that you loved from his college tape, it still plays. That ability to mirror, that ability to move and to just, fluidly adjust and match receivers is still there. So, I think year one was kind of a baptism by fire. Year two, they still believe in him. He's going to be a starter. Opposite DJ Reed. Year two, I think, is where we see him really become a good caliber corner.
Yeah, I also went with Terrion Arnold for a lot of the reasons you said. And I know it's easy to want to look for the trends and pick the guy that, started slow and then always got better. And I think if you just look at the penalties, as we highlighted on the first round review, the fact that he had, 8 penalties in the first 4 weeks and then 2 the rest of the season, that trajectory was better. It wasn't like he wasn't giving up yards after that or anything. It wasn't like it all got better, but that's just one example of seeing the improvement of Terrion Arnold as the season went on. The other thing that we've learned is about cornerback production and how that tends to fluctuate. And it's not as simple as, well, this guy played well, he'll always play well from a production standpoint. The fact that Arnold was a little bit lower from a PFF grade standpoint and everything doesn't necessarily mean he's destined for that. I thought there was a lot about his game to be optimistic about, especially in the second half of the season.
And we said this before with the penalty thing, but think about what that does to your sort of psychology as a corner, right? He comes into the league, his special sauce is that man coverage ability. Like you can go one-on-one with these receivers. You did in the SEC, go do it in the NFL, lock them up, play physical, show them what you've got, right? And then as you said, the first 4 weeks of the season, we get 8 penalties, most of which are in coverage. And then you're like, okay, I got to dial it back. I can't play this way. So suddenly what you thought was your skill set, what you thought you were really good at, the league just told you in 4 weeks, you have to stop doing that. You can't play that way. Otherwise, you're going to be benched midway through the season. So yeah, he changed, like he adjusted. He learned, he went, okay, I got to back it off. And he wasn't as physical, wasn't as grabby as he was in that first month. On the other hand, that almost certainly completely changed how he played the game. And so it didn't necessarily mean, well, okay, he stopped getting coverage penalties, but he was still getting barbecued, right? Because he wasn't playing the game the way he needed to. Like, I just think this is a guy that needed like the full season and now this offseason to kind of work out where the line is, how he needs to play in order to get comfortable with what he's doing. I just think a year of experience is huge for Arnold. Like, I don't think you can look at that and say, well, that's who he's going to be. He had to learn on the fly, adjust on the fly, and had like probably the way he wants to play the game kind of taken away from him because the officials made it very clear to begin with that he was over the line already. I just think it's difficult to overestimate how much that would have changed how he wants to play.
All right, let's go Chicago Bears next up here in the NFC North. Who do you have for the Bears?
I went with I did. I went with Rome Odunze. Again, another guy who didn't necessarily dominate, didn't necessarily really impress year one in his rookie year. But I do think when you watch the tape, there's a lot more good there from Odunze than maybe the opportunities he was given. This whole dynamic in Chicago of how much of it is Caleb Williams and how much of it is everything around Caleb Williams. Williams certainly contributed to the failings of the offensive line, to the failings of the passing game, even if he wasn't necessarily the root cause, right? Even if we want to blame Shane Waldron or whatever for everything that happened that was negative in Chicago, like ultimately you can trace it back through the quarterback, right? And I think there were a lot of plays where Odunze, ran a good route, got open, made half of a good play, and then the other half never arrived. The opportunity wasn't there. So I do think that Odunze's got a lot more potential than we saw from his rookie season.
I considered Odunze here. For whatever reason, my mind was on non-quarterbacks. Obviously, Caleb Williams could be the year two breakout with Ben Johnson coming in. I went with Austin Booker on the defensive line. So I went, last year's fourth rounder, he was the classic quote upside pick. I might still be a year early on predicting this for Booker. Didn't play a ton last year, was just okay. Another one of those guys, if you go back and watch his preseason tape, and we'll be doing this in August, Sam, we'll be like, look at how good this guy's in the preseason. He could be a contributor. He could be a part of the rotation. And then he doesn't do a whole lot in the regular season. That was Booker last year. So it still might be a year early here because he was very inexperienced at Kansas. Only about 500-600 snaps total in his career. Didn't do a ton last year, but I think he's got the length, the tools, the speed to power to develop and become an effective edge rusher. So I might be a year early on Booker, but I'll do that. Predict that for this year. Austin Booker breakout. Let's go Green Bay Packers next up here in the North.
I went with tight end Luke Musgrave. So classic example, like teams do this all the time. They double dip at a position and the guy that was drafted lower down ends up becoming the better player. We saw that at tight end with Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst. Andrews was the guy drafted later, ended up becoming a much better player going forward. That's happened already in Green Bay. Tucker Kraft has become the better tight end right now. He's a more well-rounded player. I do still think, though, that Luke Musgrave can become a good player. Like, when you saw in practices and preseason and stuff, they were drawing up plays for Luke Musgrave. Like, they wanted him as a significant part in that offense because the size and the athleticism and the dynamism he has as a route runner, as a player with the ball in his hands, like, that's crazy. I mean, it's elite level NFL caliber, weaponry that just has not been a big factor so far in the NFL and has been sort of superseded. Tucker Kraft becoming a really good player. But I don't think that means that Musgrave should be written off. Like, I feel like there should be a breakout to come from him, even if it's not going to look like they thought it would when they thought he would be the number one guy and, the really big impact player. But I still think he can have a breakout, if not, become the player.
Yeah, I like that as far as Musgrave. I mean, when we were at training camp and you saw them trying to target him and everything. I mean, you could see the potential there. He's got size and speed, and you could see where that would all play.
And in a way, it becomes easier now that Tucker Kraft has become like the number one tight end and is a good blocker relative to Musgrave. Like, he doesn't need to be on the field for those situations. He can now be a much more focused, narrower role of just a pass catching move tight end.
I'm going to go Devontae Wyatt here for the Packers. Interesting career for Wyatt, another former first-round pick. He's heading into year 4. Early in the season last year, had a bunch of sacks early, the first 3 weeks of the year, got banged up, missed some time, came back. If you go back and look at his production over the last few years, it's good pass rushing grades, okay, run defense grades. If you look at PFF, I think that's kind of been his MO. Another guy that doesn't have the best anchor in the world, but is really disruptive. But he played 220 snaps his first year, 600 plus in his second year. But last year, the injury held him to 366. So he's never really put together that full season. So I'm going to say Wyatt putting it all together, staying healthy. The scheme change last year seemed to help him a little bit, play to his strengths a little bit. Again, as one of those guys that's in and around 300 pounds at defensive tackle that just needs to get upfield and disrupt. I think he's shown flashes. So I'm going to predict Wyatt putting it all together for a full season here for the Packers. I have a strange one for the Vikings, but it's fun. This is like it's a call to action for the rest of the league. Minnesota Vikings. Who do you have here?
I'm going to go with Mekhi Blackmon, the cornerback that they have, who basically is their only real proven corner at this point. I thought was probably poised for a breakout a year ago and then tore his ACL and missed the whole season. I'm going to say, okay, coming back from an ACL is not ideal, but this is his year. They need him. They're going to lean on him. He's got the talent. Like, he's got ability to play man and zone coverage. He's an undersized corner, but this is an aggressive defense. They're going to be stacked up front now. They're going to be getting after the quarterback. There's going to be a lot of opportunities, I think, for a corner to ball hawk in this defense. I think Mekhi Blackmon's really good at doing that. So I think this is his year, assuming he comes back healthy.
Yeah, it was disappointing having him get hurt last year. I thought he had a chance to be one of the best draft picks of Kwesi's regime here for Minnesota. So I like that as a selection for the Vikings, especially given the opportunity that he should have, hopefully coming off the injury. So I'm going to go with Jalen Redmond, the defensive tackle. And here's the call to action here is, maybe Minnesota doesn't properly appreciate what they have in Jalen Redmond. He's kind of the classic, what we used to look for, right? When we talked about breakout players early in our days at PFF, we'd say, look, we saw Cameron Wake on 100 snaps, or we saw Richard Sherman or Chris Harris in like these small sample sizes, and we tried to highlight them as secret superstars, as we used to call it. Jalen Redmond is that guy, that classic, look, for 300 snaps or 200 snaps, the guy was fantastic. And he's got an interesting, this goes way back to my priors as well, because he's got an interesting career path, also defensive tackle, because that's who I'm looking at here. Jalen Redmond, Oklahoma, undersized defensive tackle, kind of a hybrid edge defensive tackle in college. Had him on my watch list heading into the draft. Didn't necessarily progress. Goes undrafted in 2023. In 2024, he lands in Minnesota, and that was the first time he saw the field in the NFL regular season. And he's out there. Go watch his film, Sam. 75 PFF grade, but go watch his film and see how unblockable he was at times at his size. He's just disrupting in the backfield. And the call to action here is for the rest of the NFL to call the Vikings and go get Jalen Redmond, because they just brought in Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, and they might not be believers in Jalen Redmond, but I am. And so he's going to break out for someone else this year. Someone else is going to call. Maybe he's still a part of the rotation for Minnesota, but someone else call and go get Jalen Redmond. Buy low on Redmond. He is what I thought he was going to be coming out of Oklahoma 4 years ago. He was fantastic last year, Sam.
I thought you were going to go, you want super small sample size. What about Levi Drake Rodriguez on the defensive line as well? Another defensive tackle for you. He's a fun player. Like, he got a lot of hype last year because despite being undrafted, right? He's 7th round pick from East Texas to A&M, Texas Commerce. And he got like a lot of buzz because he was the Prospect X that The Athletic runs every year, where they write the story about a prospect and redact his name effectively, right? Don't tell you who it is until after the draft. Levi Drake Rodriguez was Prospect X and had been the sort of under the radar guy who was dominant at the Tropical Bowl. And then, a lot of people loved him as a sort of late round pick or an undrafted rookie. Comes in, was pretty good in preseason, got a lot of hype, and then saw like 7 snaps last season. So, maybe him. The obvious name people are going to throw out there, Minnesota has 2 of them. They've got obviously J.J. McCarthy, who knee injury, lost his rookie season. We got to see what he does on offense. And then Dallas Turner on defense, their first round pick, who did basically nothing in year 1. And yeah, either one of those could break out, but they're less interesting, I think.
I agree. Jalen Redmond, much better, more interesting. I was blown away by how well he played. And I don't know the full story on why he didn't get a chance until last year, because he always looked like a good player to me at Oklahoma and was glad he had that opportunity last year. Let's go. We're halfway through, man. Let's go to the Souths. AFC South is next up. Houston Texans. Where are you going to go with the Texans?
Yeah, so generally speaking, I've tried to avoid putting rookies as breakout candidates. This is the first time, though, where I'm going with a rookie. Struggle to find another one that
It's our show, Sam. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Generally, I don't think rookies are breakout candidates because they haven't, they're just, this is the first time we're seeing them, so they might be good, they might be bad. If they're good, they didn't break out. They were just good right away. But sometimes needs must, and you can't find a better breakout candidate, so I've gone with a rookie here. The rookie in question, I think Jalen Noel, the Iowa State receiver, one of 2. I think he's the one that's more likely to have an instant breakout, an instant, impact on this offense. We love Jalen Noel. The more you watch his tape, the more you love what he could do. Quick and fast, dynamic, can be a vertical slot threat. Is way better at the catch point than you think he will be when you sort of look at him and picture him as like this small, fast receiver. I could imagine him immediately coming in. That we talked like the whole offseason has been about like sliding Christian Kirk effectively for me. When we were putting Jack Bash on this team pre-draft process, it was all about like Christian Kirk's always been the guy whose snaps they can take. Jalen Noel can immediately come in and be everything Christian Kirk was supposed to be for Jacksonville and then Houston. I think he could do that as a rookie.
I like you breaking the rules for Jalen Noel. That's perfectly fine. He's going to break out. He's going to break out. No one's going to see it coming this year. I think the Texans were tough. So I kind of broke the rules a little bit too, going Kamari Lassiter at cornerback. Had a nice rookie season. He was good. I think he'll have a lot of opportunities this year. You know what happens at cornerback? As soon as the cornerback gets the reputation, they tend to get avoided. And I'm not saying Derek Stingley last year, people just realized he was good. But last year was the first time he started to really look like, for consistent, periods of time, the number 3 overall pick. He was outstanding last year. And Stingley also had a little bit of that Richard Sherman, don't throw down the field to him because dude's going to pick it off, right? So I think teams are going to be more afraid of Derek Stingley this year, which means Lassiter is going to get targeted a lot more. So here's my caveat here. I don't know if it shows up in the pure, say, PFF grade or completion percentage allowed or yards per attempt, or he might give up 600-700 yards, but I think he'll make a lot of plays on the ball and he'll get a lot of opportunities. I think he's going to get targeted a lot this year, but I like him a lot as a player. And if he plays well, Sam, having the 1-2 punch of Stingley and Lassiter with that pass rush does give the Texans, we've said before, they have number 1 defense type of potential with all the players they have coming back, the defensive line depth. So it's a big year for Lassiter. And if I'm right here and he does break out and have a productive season, we are talking about the Texans having one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, certainly there's a lot of talent there.
Indianapolis Colts are up next. Oh man, I see your answer here.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Daniel Jones. I think this is Daniel Jones, but I think he ends up winning the job, not necessarily by, looking like a star, but because Anthony Richardson effectively plays his way to the bench, doesn't win the job. If Daniel Jones wins or is given this job, we've said it before. This is the best situation around Daniel Jones he's had in the NFL. And he's already played his way to a decent sized contract so far in the NFL. I think Daniel Jones, with a good coach, a good play caller, now a good receiving core and a good offensive line, could look like a good quarterback, right? That's as far as I'm willing to go. I'm not going to say he'll look like a great quarterback or he'll be the answer. I think Daniel Jones could look like a good NFL quarterback and effectively break out. Like Daniel Jones right now is a punchline. It's, oh, look at this joke of a quarterback situation. This is terrible. This time, or the end of the year, I think we could be the narrative around Jones could be very different.
Paint a picture for me, because last year at this time, if we said, hey, at the end of this year, we're going to be sitting here debating whether or not Sam Darnold is worth $40 million a year or not.
Right.
And depending on which week you're having that conversation, it's either slam dunk, yes, or it's like, those last couple of weeks were bad. What does the picture look like week 16, 17, 18 here? The Colts are sitting here with 1 year of Daniel Jones. So are they debating whether or not he's the long-term answer here at the end of the season?
I mean, if this breakout prediction is correct, then you could be, yeah. Like that's what's, I mean, if he has that kind of season, you're going to have to be asking the question. But look, think about it this way, right? Even when Daniel Jones was playing quote unquote badly, he was still a dynamic rushing threat, right? He brings that to the table the same way Anthony Richardson does. I mean, he's not Anthony Richardson, but same idea, right? So the offense doesn't change. It's still powered by this dynamic rushing threat in addition to Jonathan Taylor, in addition to what they can do there. What disappeared from Jones' game was the dimes. Danny Dimes stopped being Danny Dimes. He just was Danny. And that was not good enough, right? He makes a moderate amount of mistakes with the football. And then that was fine in the first couple of years of his career where he was dropping dimes. And you're like, all right, we've got a rushing threat who makes some mistakes and makes some big plays. And then he just stopped making big plays, right? If he gets that back, if he rediscovers the dimes, Danny Dimes can be a good NFL quarterback.
All right. This will be fun to revisit if it happens. Because like we said, we just need 20%, 25% of these we'll hit. We'll turn back the clock and say, look, we nailed it. I'm going to go. I thought you'd go Latu, like me. Guy we loved coming out. We called him underwhelming as well last year because our expectations were high. Yeah. He wasn't awful by any stretch. There were points. He just didn't have that consistent pass rush production that I was looking for. There was a few games where it looked right and had a really good game against Olu Fashanu, the fellow rookie. Actually had a lot of his success against the rookies. But Latu, I think, should be better in year two all-around game as far as playing the run, but especially rushing the passer and putting that full toolbox to the test here in year two. So I got Latu breaking out in year two. Jacksonville Jaguars.
I know I just talked about how Darnold and Geno Smith are going to power copium for the next decade or so.
You have your next
It is
guy.
worth at least acknowledging, though, that like those happened last couple of years. So if we're just, there's no way. This is absurd. This is a joke. Like we just saw a more ridiculous thing happen in Sam Darnold becoming that guy. Like Jones has at least already shown that he's capable of high-end play.
As we do, before we get to the Jags, as we do on this show, we don't need to look at the recent history and say, well, the most recent history is definitely going to happen right now. Who's the next Puka Nacua? There's going to be another 5th round receiver who's going to be a top 10 receiver immediately. Who's the next Brock Purdy? Who's the next 7th rounder who's going to become a good NFL starting quarterback? Doesn't always happen. So it doesn't always happen that there'll be another Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, whoever it is. On the other hand, when someone suggests that it could happen, don't say that's impossible that it can happen because it just happened, right? So take the good, check the mic middle ground here and acknowledge we don't need to say history will immediately repeat itself. We also don't have to say it's impossible for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I wouldn't be rushing out to put money on this, but it's clearly plausible, right? Like it makes sense. It's a theoretical construct that isn't ridiculous based off the current evidence, which doesn't mean it's incredibly likely. But yeah, if I had to grab one for the Colts, which I had to do for this, I think Daniel Jones having a breakout season is the most likely breakout for them.
All right, let's go Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jags is another one that I struggle with a bit. Because, Brian Thomas Jr. has already broken out. Like that would be an easy one, but he's already he could break out more. I mean, he could be even more dominant this year. But I don't think he qualifies as a breakout based off how good he was as a rookie. I didn't see too many other options for guys that are going to take a big leap and be significantly better this year.
So I went with right tackle Anton Harrison. I was grinding Harrison film and was impressed. You know what I really like is when my notes on players in the NFL match my college notes. And it's like, oh, I said the same stuff. Patience in the run game. Way back in 2000, I was looking at my notes from 22, way back. Predicted that he was going to be a Charles Leno type, really just dependable, average plus tackle. What do you got?
I would like to do that as well, except my notes were tied to my PFF Google account, and those were purged the second we left the building.
No. No, I got a great spreadsheet where I can look year by year, and I'm going through the whole thing. Harrison had like a lot of his worst reps. We need to do without Myles Garrett takes on all these offensive linemen. That skews everything. I mean, he had some rough reps. That was where I'm watching Garrett, and I'm just like, the dude just took 3 steps, and the poor tackle is just finishing his pass set, and it's just not fair. Like, he really is not fair. I know Steelers fans want to debate TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. Like, there's just no comparison to Garrett in the NFL right now. And so I'm watching Harrison. I'm like, man, you've got year 3 of playing tackle in his favor. I think he's a pretty good pass protector. He's not great, but I think he has all the tools. Like, he's right there. There's a couple mental blips in there. I think he's primed to be that guy that's sitting here a year from now. Maybe it's a 75 to 80 PFF pass blocking grade. The run blocking is still an issue for Harrison. It was all the way back to Oklahoma, sustain and movement and everything, but he's athletic. I think he'll have a good year in pass protection. I'm calling pass protection breakout season here for Anton Harrison.
He's repeating the Juwan Taylor career arc, where he's going to get pretty good just as the contract hits, and then someone's going to give him a crazy amount of money, and you're like, whoa.
But that's the nature of the position too. That's the other part that that's the other analysis I'm trying to bring here is how many offensive linemen have you and I seen over the last decade plus of doing this? Eric Fisher, Donovan Smith, guys who looked bad, right? Below average for the first 2 years of their career. And by year 3, 4, or 5, they're reasonable starters. And those guys are worth a lot of money. Reasonable starters. Juwan Taylor has been a reasonable starter for the Chiefs. Not a great starter, not like a guy you think, I got to pay him $20 million at the time. But he's been a reasonable starter, and that's the going rate for those players.
That's the thing. So it's now this horrific catch-22 situation where if you want to pay for a guy that's sort of proven but not great, like a Dan Moore, right? He's a proven rank average offensive lineman. That's now costing you $21 million a year. So you're now incentivized to gamble on these project developmental offensive tackles, because if they're good, you're saving, $18 million a year or whatever, right? But the problem is it takes those guys 4 years to get good. And then by the time they're good, they go and get $21 million a year out of somebody else. And you just basically paid the guy, you just wasted 4 years of developing this guy to not get any surplus value out of him. You're trapped in this sort of horrible situation where, you basically have to pay for above average offensive tackle play now.
Yeah, it's a challenging spot unless you're getting the comp pick, but is that enough? Let's round out the AFC South with the Tennessee Titans. I didn't go defensive tackle here, but I see that maybe you did.
Well, I did. I went with T'Vondre Sweat, the mammoth monster defensive tackle. I thought he really impressed as a nose tackle year 1. I think he's fun because he's an unusual player. He's not the guy you think he is when you just sort of see what he is, right? This 350-pound, 60-pound defensive tackle. You're like, you picture Jordan Davis, right? He occupies 2 gaps. He doesn't give up a lot of ground, and occasionally he's able to wreck a guy and get into the backfield. Like, T'Vondre Sweat is a disruptive menace on the defensive line, and he isn't just limited to being a nose tackle. He can move around. He can play multiple different alignments on that defensive front, and he played more snaps than I think people were expecting him to play as well. Like, he's not a durability concern or what's the word I'm looking for here?
Rotation, liability,
stamina. Stamina is not a problem for him either, right? Like, he can play a significant amount of snaps, and I just think
worried about that. By the way,
breakout.
We discussed that a ton going in. We didn't know if that would be an
Yeah.
issue for Sweat because he didn't have that opportunity.
And I think he already showed that he's capable of doing that. Like it was the same. It was a question for Jordan Davis as well for different reasons, I think. But Sweat, I think, has already answered that question. And I think the arc is only going to point up for him.
Couple games last year. Remember the Monday night game against Miami where it's like that is what we're talking about. There was 2 games where he had 90 plus PFF grades where you just watch him. It's like Miami Monday Night Football back in week 4 and then the Cincinnati game where he was, recovering fumbles and running like crazy. But couple games where he was just unblockable and you saw that potential for Sweat. So I absolutely considered Sweat because he's a defensive tackle. I considered him as my breakout player, but I'm going to go the guy drafted ahead of him last year in the draft class, J.C. Latham. In part because for a guy that moved from right to left, that's a little, big boned, we'll say, switching from the right to the left side, I thought he held his own. There's some ugly, awful reps in there last year in his first year playing left tackle. But I think the move back to right tackle will do him well. Once again, projecting a little bit of just experience for offensive linemen usually works well, usually works in their favor. And the fact I don't think Latham was a disaster by any means last year, by any stretch. So, yeah, I think going back to right tackle will help Latham quite a bit. And I like either of those players, T'Vondre Sweat or J.C. Latham, as the breakout for the Titans last year's top 2 draft picks.
All right,
let's what do we have? NFC South now? Yes. Atlanta Falcons are up next.
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I struggled with this. On the other hand, Michael Penix is the obvious answer. I mean, flashed late in the year, had a couple of spectacular games, a bunch of spectacular plays. I mean, if Zach Robinson is to be believed, and if what we saw was real, Michael Penix could easily have a massive breakout and look like a superstar.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, again, to remind people, go back and listen to our Zach Robinson interview discussion from Monday. He was raving about Penix, and we were asking about that process, right? Drafting Michael Penix after signing Kirk Cousins, tried to get a little bit of the inside info on that. So we did our best on Monday, but the whole building raving about Penix, and it showed up on film. I thought throw by throw last year, he definitely missed some easy ones, right? He was just inconsistent, but man, some of the special that he brought out was outstanding. And the ability to attack every level of the field, I think, is going to be huge for the Falcons. So you're right. Michael Penix, the obvious one. I went with last year's 3rd rounder, Braylon Trice. So even though they just invested in Jalen Walker and James Pierce on the edge, Braylon Trice was supposed to be the guy to step in. They didn't attack the edge rush spot until later in the draft, 3rd round. They had a massive need last year. Then he gets hurt. But coming out of Washington, he was an impact player. I liked him, didn't love him as a prospect, but I'm going to call him, a big part of the rotation here. I think he'll be at least a good rotational player. I think that's kind of what they drafted last year. There's a chance if those first rounders play well, or at least one of them, Walker or Pierce, adding Braylon Trice, Ruka Rororo last year, some of those players are good rotational players. There's a chance Atlanta's defensive line does take a massive step forward, and Trice is just a part of that at least. So breakout for him is a low standard because he didn't play last year.
Yeah, I wanted to go with one of those defensive linemen, because they fit the bill. But the fact that they drafted 2 first-round edge rushers was enough to make me go, okay, you don't do that if you have faith that Braylon Trice is going to be the guy this year. So that kind of takes him away. Then you're looking at the defensive lineman. The guy that I liked the most of those interior guys was actually Brandon Dorlus, but he's presumably buried on that depth chart, and you would say that's not going to happen either. So I was like, all right, I'm not going with the defensive lineman. The other one to throw out there every year is the inevitable. This is the year for Kyle Pitts. This is the year Kyle Pitts puts it all together. It's going to take one training camp rep where you're like, see, best tight end in the NFL when he puts it together. And I'm just not doing that every year.
Year 2 in the system here. Kyle Pitts. Carolina Panthers are up next. Who do you have for the Panthers?
I mean, this is one where, does Bryce Young count? Because, okay, remember, he was benched last year, right? He was sat down and effectively written off as a quarterback last year. So with that standard, I think if he does come back and pick up where he left off, Bryce Young breaks out as a legitimate, Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. And that is a massive jump forward relative to this time a year ago.
there are some people that maybe you're not or were not an astute check the mic listener last year during the season. And you're coming in saying, Bryce Young, why are these guys, they continue to rave about Bryce Young? He wasn't even that good last year. And if you look at the total stat line, 60% completions, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks, 6.3 yards per attempt. Okay, that's not great at all. And you even look at some of the games where if you were an astute listener and you showed up on a Monday morning, because we review every single game Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, and you were like, why are these guys raving about Bryce Young? He just went 16 for 26 for 171, 15 for 25 for 126, threw for 191, threw for 158 and 2 touchdowns against Arizona, but still had a 91 PFF grade because all of his big-time throws were dropped. I mean, what are these guys talking about? Because he played so much better. So you could make the case that the breakout's going to actually show up statistically now that we have Teterow and McMillan. We have more, we don't have that benching. You don't have those awful first couple games that dragged everything down. So, yeah, you could easily make the case statistically things will start to match the play of Bryce Young with everything around him now. So I'm backing you up.
Good.
I went Jatavian Sanders, the tight end. Second-year tight end. Another guy that, you don't want run blocking in line a whole lot, but has some speed after the catch ability, maybe an underrated weapon here for Bryce Young's breakout here, Sam.
So your list is basically defensive tackles and second-year tight ends.
That's correct. Well, there's only two. How many? Two? 2 second-year tight ends.
Well, it's 2 so far. I assume there's several more.
Yeah, several more. I like Sanders. Sanders is all right. The playmaker, get him in space, made some plays down the seam, made some nice catches at the catch point last year. So I got Jatavian Sanders breaking out. I think he'll have opportunities. He'll have opportunities in that offense as well.
Yeah, the Panthers they're some teams I think you really struggle for potential breakout candidates. Panthers have got a bunch of them. It's just got a case of which one you want to build the case for. You could go, with Sanders as you have. You could go with Jalen Coker, given how impressive he was year one. Like you could go with Xavier Legette and him rescuing his career after a rough year one. Bunch of places I think you could go with the Panthers.
A team that you can't go a lot of places with because you didn't list anybody is the New Orleans Saints.
I don't know where you go with the Saints. Like, I guess quarterback would be the obvious one, but I have no faith in any of those quarterbacks breaking out this year, right? The 3-way battle of Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, and Tyler Shuck. Like, if I had to pick one of those to break out, it'd be Rattler, and I don't have faith in that happening. So, I mean, maybe Talise Fuanga at right tackle, if he moves to the other side, goes back to where he played in college. I don't love the Saints, period, and I don't love them for breakout candidates.
I think you could make the case for Fuanga the same way I made the case for Latham, that he was good as a rookie, could go back to right tackle and just take another step forward and establish himself as a very productive right tackle. He was the first-round pick last year. I went with the second-round pick, Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback, Alabama. When you go back and look, he had some ugly plays in there last year, but a lot of it was in zone and just seeing the field, and I think his eyes misled him quite a bit. So those were some of the rough plays for Kool-Aid, but he was pretty good in man coverage. A lot of times vertically at the catch point, played through the hands, broke up a high percentage of passes when he was targeted. I thought, McKinstry kind of went, I don't know, he was like the second tier of corners last year behind Quinyon Mitchell, his teammate Terrion Arnold. He went from always expected to go in the first round to just, he's a second rounder, but I thought he had a nice rookie season. So I got Kool-Aid as the breakout player, just cut out some of the bad plays. Trust your eyes a little bit more, Kool-Aid. But I thought he was in phase quite a bit in man coverage, and that'll do him well in year 2.
That's one of those interesting dynamics as well, where like it wouldn't have been until like the last few months effectively of their college careers where he was overtaken by Terrion Arnold in terms of where they were supposed to go in the draft, right? All the way through would have been McKinstry's the first rounder. He's the guy that's going to go top. And then suddenly towards the end, it's like, actually, we're flipping that. We think Arnold is the better player going forward, and he's the first rounder, and McKinstry becomes a second round guy. Like, at what point, if you look back now, you could make the case that this is a case where the sort of draft industrial complex just overthinks it, right? Like, at what point should we look at this and say, like, this is where college fans or college football people argue all the time with the draft and say, look, you just, like, we thought this thing all the way through and then you flipped it right at the end. Like, just stick with what we know. Like, these are the better players. Yeah. Draft those guys.
I mean, I thought Trey Amos was going to step up as the starter for Alabama that year, but Arnold and Kool-Aid had such a good year. And now Amos is sitting there in Washington. They're all in the NFL as first and second round picks. Let's wrap up the South with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Where'd you go with the Bucks here?
Went with Kalijah Kancey. Again, I thought the Bucks were not blessed with an overabundance of guys that you would say are extremely likely breakout candidates, but I think Kancey's the obvious one. Again, like classic undersized defensive tackle. Basically has Aaron Donald's measurements with the exception of arm length without being Aaron Donald, right? He's 6'1", 280-ish. So he's wildly undersized. He has been reasonably productive as a pass rushing defensive tackle. He's been pretty abysmal against the run, which you would expect. I mean, I think this is the year he's going to put it together as a pass rusher. Maybe he's always going to stink against the run, but now they've got 900 pounds of Desmond Watson and Vita Vea there, so they don't need him to do that. Just cut him loose and say, get into the backfield every play, play 4 yards deep into the backfield. That's all we need you doing.
Yeah, I wrote Kancey down as well. The dynamic here is, we as former PFFers who went through and helped do the grading play-by-play for every player for over a decade, you learn a lot, right? And we always tried to say, hey, let's not go by the highlights. I mean, there's a highlight out there of him being so fast off the ball that Penei Sewell, maybe the best right tackle in the NFL, has no shot, right? He makes Penei Sewell look bad on a play. So you could easily take that play or another play and say, look, Kancey's great against the run. The issue has been the consistency, the anchor, the holding the point, just gets blocked one-on-one far too often, right? So there's too much boom or bust in there, where there are some of those plays where he's so fast off the ball, the best right tackle in the NFL can't block him. So how do you limit some of those options? And look, it's a passing league, but you definitely don't want defensive tackles playing 8 yards down the field often enough. Yeah. So that is something that needs to improve with Kancey. But at the same time, Ed Oliver had elements of this at points in his career where he was just a better pass rusher than run defender, and even though he was the opposite in college. But yeah, Kancey's got incredible pass rushing potential, where that same ability to get up the field can be really disruptive. It showed up in his sack totals. I think there's a 50 to 60 pressure season in there for Kancey, which is awesome for a defensive interior player. And I think, it makes sense for that maybe to come good this year while the run defense gets a little bit better, even if he never becomes good.
Yeah, I think you're also seeing, you're seeing a couple of things. Number one, you're seeing why it's unfair to compare anybody to Aaron Donald ever, right? Like Donald, because the two of them, not only are they the same size, but they ran the same 40 effectively. Like Kalijah Kancey ran a 4.6 something and had a blazing 10-yard split at that size. Like those are all-time freaky numbers like Aaron Donald. But Donald was so good. Like he wasn't just an athletic, undersized defensive tackle. He was also like the most polished technician you're going to find as well. Like there's, that video out there of Aaron Donald, like practicing hand drills against a dude carrying knives. Like I assume it's fake of some kind, but the fact that it's vaguely plausible is because Donald's hand usage is nuts, right? He's somehow, despite being arguably the best defensive player of all time, I think Donald is underrated because people don't give him enough credit for that side of his game. So you get a guy like Kancey coming into the draft at a same kind of size, same kind of athleticism. You're like, okay, he's not as good as Donald, but we can get most of the way there. But I think you're seeing just how good Donald was as a technician and how good he was with his hands. And Kancey isn't, right? He's not there. He's fine, but he's not good. It's not a plus for his game at the moment. He is the freaky athlete rather, without the hand usage. And I think you're seeing how important that is in the NFL. NFL guards, NFL tackles, they're good, right? They're not going to, most of the time, they're not going to lose just because you're fast and athletic. You're going to need to have the ability to beat them with your hands and to beat them with moves. Donald could do that in his sleep. And if you left him one-on-one, he would do that. Kancey can't do that yet.
Yeah, and that's the importance of evaluating every play, right? People tried to pick apart Aaron Donald's run defense at various points in his career. Various analysts, it's like, oh, look at this, he blew a gap, or he, shot up field, and then the run went right behind him. Like, did that? Yes, that happened a few times. But the totality of Donald's career, he was incredible. He was never a run game liability. He was a disruptor, in addition to all the attention that he got as a pass rusher and all the pressures that he got as a pass rusher. There's a reason why Donald was in a completely different world as everyone else. AFC West, to wrap it up, I love this. Denver Broncos. Where are you going with the Broncos? Who's your favorite Broncos receiver to call for a breakout here?
Oh, I hate it. It feels a lot like the Jamari Thrash pick, where I'm just sort of leaning back on priors, but I'm going with Troy Franklin. I'm going to give him 1 year to put it together, and then I'm out. Okay, year one was bad. I'm not going to deny. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to claim anything different. There were, though, a bunch of plays where he was open deep. Now, did he drop a bunch of those plays once the ball arrived in his hands? Sure. But this is your argument, right? The fact that he was open deep is more important than actually catching the ball at the end of it, at least in terms of projecting forward what he can do.
Thank you for coming around.
He can get open deep as a vertical threat within this offense. And if Bo Nix continues to get better and keeps feeding him the football, his former college teammate, remember, he's going to, like, Bo Nix is going to be motivated, incentivized to rescue the career of Troy Franklin. If he keeps feeding him those opportunities, I'm going to believe that he didn't just forget how to catch the football in year one.
Thank you for coming around to my point over a
Only
decade.
It serves me in this particular instance.
The skill is getting open deep. And if Troy Franklin's open deep 10 times, he'll catch 8 of them. At least 8. And 8, it's not even a good percentage. But the payout is worth it. So yeah.
At this point, I'd take 5. Like, forget 8. Just give me 5 of them.
I'm going to go. I'm a Troy Franklin fan as well, so I'm with you there. I'll go Marvin Mims, the other slightly underachieving receiver, but Mims started to come good last year, second half of the year, finished with over 500 yards, including the playoffs, 6 touchdowns, all from week 11 on. You also saw him lined up all over the backfield and everything. So there was a point in the season where the usage pattern shifted, right? Mims was the guy who we'll take a deep shot every now and again. We'll give him a jet sweep every now and again. We'll give him some sort of design touch. They started moving him around, putting him in the backfield, just using his skill set a lot more. And then the deep stuff kind of opened up after they did more with Mims. Had that incredible catch against the Bengals in that Saturday game down the field, one of Bo Nix's best throws, maybe his best as a rookie. So yeah, I like Mims as the breakout guy. He had that ability in college. I call it the Kenny Stills. Remember Kenny Stills? Kenny Stills was fast for the Saints, but when you watched him, it was like he's always open deep, but it's not like he's doing much. It's like anybody could just run wide open through the secondary, the Kenny Stills effect. But Mims always seemed to do that well at Oklahoma. It's tough to always say, how does that translate? Why can't anyone just be a part of the busted coverage? But I think Mims has that ability to just be sneaky fast on defenses, but then he's also good in space. And I think we'll see even more of the design touches in a good way for Marvin Mims here this year. Who's next here? Kansas City Chiefs are up next.
All right. Second time to the rookie well for me. Loved Kansas City's draft, so you could go with pretty much any of the players they drafted. But the one that I'm going with is the least heralded of them all, Brashad Smith, the running back from SMU. That Chiefs backfield does not inspire a ton of confidence. There's a bunch of interesting players there. There's a bunch of kind of, cult heroes there with Pacheco and Strong and that kind of thing. But I think Brashad Smith could actually carve himself a role as like one of maybe their best back going forward. Young to the position, right? He was a college wide receiver that got converted to running back last year at SMU. And so obviously he's got the kind of the pass catching chops that you expect from that. He's got good hands. He's got the ability to be a receiving back, a third down weapon. But I think he's also good just carrying the ball. Like I think between the tackles, he's good. Maybe, a tick late reading it all and sort of being able to do it instinctively on the fly. But just once he sees it, he's really good. I could imagine Brashad Smith, teaming up in this offense, getting to work with Andy Reid, and becoming a really good impact player right away. For
the haters who say rookies can't break out, we say It's our show. Sam can pick whatever he wants.
And I also, I mean, I kind of acknowledge that, but when you're left with a guy, when you're at a team where you don't like any of the breakout candidates, I'm forced to turn to the rookie class.
Yeah, mine was kind of a hybrid of opportunity and kind of like the player. I went Jaden Hicks, the safety, second-year safety, third rounder out of Washington State from last year. The opportunity is there with Justin Reed moving on. Hicks played a little bit last year, made some nice plays, end zone interception against Brock Purdy. Works downhill very, very well. I think he's got some good short area burst, kind of long safety playmaker type. So part of this is banking on Spags in this defense, giving him the opportunity, fitting into this defense that's going to play a lot of man coverage on the outside, and he'll be patrol in the middle, which playing that robber type of role, which I think Hicks does pretty well. He had some ugly plays last year as a rookie as well in space, but the opportunity, he's a pretty good player. And I think he'll develop in year 2 here. So I think, and they believe in him, right? There's a little bit of this, they had to make some calls. They couldn't re-sign everybody. So they're relying on him. So I think he steps into a good defense and has a nice year.
Yeah. And part of this is sometimes there's an obvious breakout candidate, but I don't think that obvious candidate is likely to do that. So Xavier Worthy is the obvious breakout candidate for Kansas City. I don't Xavier Worthy had well, that's regular season only. I mean, he had almost 1,000 yards for the season, including the playoffs. He had a good rookie season. What are the chances Xavier Worthy's year 2 is significantly better than his first year? I wouldn't say they're that high. So I think he'll still be a good receiver. He'll still be a good part of this offense, but I don't envisage this clear jump forward as a breakout player. Rashee Rice, I think, has already broken out. I don't think he counts. So, Worthy is the obvious breakout candidate for Kansas City, but I'm not going with Worthy because I don't think that he will be a significant breakout player.
Let's go Las Vegas Raiders next. Who's your breakout player for the Raiders?
Jackson Powers Johnson at center. So a lot like Cooper Beebe. I think he was already pretty good year 1. And leaning back on the priors a little bit, I think he has the potential to be exceptionally good. So I think Jackson Powers Johnson year 2 becomes one of the better centers in the NFL. Again, sort of like the Tyler Linderbaum arc, where he was capable right away. Took him a little bit of time, and now he's one of the better centers out there. Jackson Powers Johnson, particularly now you've got upgrade at quarterback, you've got upgrade at running back, the situation around him, and he should look better even if he isn't playing any better.
Yeah, I went the same way. Jackson Powers Johnson, the ability to just play center full time. He looked good when he played center last year for sure. But just locking in as a center. And so this is same reasoning that you have, because, sometimes we land on the same reasoning. If you hold your own as a rookie, as an offensive lineman, I think that bodes well for the future. And JPJ as a full-time center just makes a lot of sense to me. He's got incredible power when, similar to Beebe, when he locks on, he is moving people at the point of attack. He's pretty quick. He's got had some sweet reps there last year. Sometimes I like watching the battles that go both ways. He had a couple blocks against Nick Bolton of the Chiefs, and Bolton, he's a good run defender, man. He gets to the spot and makes plays. We were talking to Zach about that great play that he made to seal the deal for the Chiefs against the Falcons. He's got this play against Bolton where he blocks. It's the third guy that he blocks, and he just puts Bolton on his butt after blocking 2 people. And then Bolton comes back and has a good rep against him. I like some of those back and forth battles, and JPJ, I think, can hold his own against some of the best linebackers at the second level, the nose tackles at the point of attack. I think he can do it all. So, yeah, I like JPJ quite a bit, and I like picking second-year offensive line breakout. So this one made a lot of sense for me.
Yep.
I don't have Tyree Wilson, even though trajectory is in the right way. He's moving the right direction here. Moving the right direction. All right, let's wrap up the AFC West with the Los Angeles Chargers, Sam.
Didn't love the options for the Chargers. I think you could go in a couple of different directions. I think you could argue Tarheeb Steele at corner was a guy I kind of figure he's already broken out, so wasn't who I went with. You could easily argue, again, the rookie class, if you were stuck, you could make the case for Trey Harris, Marion Hampton, any of those guys. I ended up going with Deion Henley at linebacker. athletic linebacker. I think he's flashed in his first couple of seasons, like a former 3rd-round pick with great athleticism, a little bit undersized. Like, I think he's flashed in each of those years. His biggest weakness has been in coverage, which is not unusual for linebackers. Maybe year 3 is the year he puts it together and we see this jump forward in his play. But I think he's been pretty good against the run. The athleticism shows, like the flashes are there. And then this year is where we see him take that step forward in understanding what's happening around him.
Sorry, who did you just say?
Dan Henley?
Oh, Henley. Yeah. He former wide receiver that makes sense. I like Henley as an option. I went Tuli Tuipulotu, who have more opportunities this year. I mean, had them last year now that Joey Bosa's gone, but Bosa hasn't been on the field much. But year 3 for Tuli, to have Khalil Mack back, so there's not a full pressure on him to be the guy. He's been fine. He's been solid his first 2 years. Pretty good against the run. Pretty good pass rusher. But I'm going to call him the breakout player for this year. If you just look at his his rankings against the average over the last couple of years, it's almost like dead smack in the middle as far as starters go. So I'm expecting a slight jump up here into that next tier for Tuli this year. Good finishes well in the run game and pretty effective pass rusher. So year 3 breakout for Tuli here. We got one division to go. You ready?
Yep.
NFC West, Arizona Cardinals. Where are you going with the Cardinals?
So I'm going to buy. I've been buying it all off season. It's the one narrative I've been suckered into. You, all of them. Me, couple of them. I'm going with the Baron Browning breakout. I think I buy the idea that Baron Browning was essentially playing hurt last year on a bum ankle or whatever he was dealing with. Baron Browning has got the tools. He's got evidence of him being a disruptive pressure player in the past, albeit a while ago now. And they've massively upgraded the help around him. Like, there's so many more weapons on that defensive line now. I think this is the year we see Baron Browning actually become much more of a consistent force of a rotational edge rusher for them.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like one of those when the guy gets training camp hype, it doesn't always show itself that year. Sometimes it's 2 years later. I mean, this was Browning has been showing the flashes as a pass rusher for a couple of years now, right? Where he went from linebacker to edge and in Denver and never really took that next step. So maybe it just happens a couple of years later. I'm going to go in the secondary. I'm going Garrett Williams, who you could argue broke out last year, but maybe we didn't rave about it enough, right? He had a couple big plays in there, but maybe we didn't give it the credence that it needed. Played a lot in the slot, played a lot of zone in the slot, but I thought he played it well. Made a lot of plays, made plays on the ball, and I thought he showed a really good feel for that scheme. And I think there's a little bit more development inside outside for him. And I think I'm calling him a breakout player, even though if you go back and look at the production, he already had a really nice 2024.
Yeah, I wish I had my old draft notes for him. I really liked him as a prospect. He ended up being a 3rd-round pick, but he was a guy who tore his ACL and kind of missed most of his final year, right? So the kind of he was always going to be, well, not only have you got to make that jump from college to the NFL, you got to do it whilst recovering from a significant knee injury. But he looks like an absolute baller already. Like, he's a little bit undersized. He's only 5'10", but he's 190 plus pounds. He's got the speed. And I think he's got some really impressive coverage skills. Like, he's, I think, become a really good player for them already. So I think, I don't know that, to me, he's already broken out, but I think this is the year he becomes much more, people recognize it a lot more. Like, he's going to get a lot more credit this year.
Household name breakout.
I mean, Nate Tice is out there raving about him already, but like, that's the caliber of person right now that's sort of talking about Garrett Williams. It's the, the proper tape grinding, NFL guys. The casual fan is not aware of who Garrett Williams is yet. I think that might change this year.
We'll call it the household name breakout.
Yeah.
More people in the household will be naming Garrett Williams. That's the breakout. Chat's discussing a couple interesting names from last year's draft class. Of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think either of you either of us is over there saying expecting a massive step forward here, but maybe. I mean, I still like him. I'm not going to dismiss it. So he's there, and then Trey Benson, the running back. My issue there, I think, is just opportunity, where Connor has been such a workhorse. Maybe Benson doesn't get the opportunity, but I still like both players.
Yeah, I mean, if I've put Roma Dunze on there as a potential breakout candidate, Harrison should at least be in the conversation. He had 150 more yards and 5 more touchdowns than a Dunze year one. So it's not like he was night and day better. It's a slightly tighter, jump, but it's possible. And we talked all year about how utterly unable he was to get on the same page as Kyler Murray. If they're able to get on that same page, there is a huge jump to be had just by back shoulder throws, if nothing else. It's like 400 yards where the back shoulder throws sitting there just waiting to be picked up if they're able to get on the same page.
And 5 touchdowns. Here we go. So maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. in there as well. We're going to be optimistic about the Cardinals this year, I believe. You and I. Los Angeles Rams. Who's your breakout for the Rams?
I went with Cameron Kitchens, the safety. Again, you could kind of argue that he broke out already as a rookie, was really impressive right away. Such a weird prospect because it was terrible, I think, in his final season in Miami. But it was terrible. When you watch the tape, he was basically at the root cause of every single big negative play that happened to that Miami defense. So you can look at that in a couple of ways. You can look at it and say, being at the source of every bad play is a bad thing for a safety, and we don't want any part of that. And given where he was drafted, a lot of teams thought that way. I tended to look at it and say, this is so bad, and the year before did not look like this, that it's basically impossible to replicate this again, right? It's like the Sideshow Bob thing from The Simpsons, where no matter where you step on a rake, and it just smacks you in the head. You can't do that again. It's too difficult to be that bad 2 years in a row. And when you sort of take away whatever freaky perfect storm of terrible happened to him that year, you've got a lot of good. You've got athleticism. You've got the ability to ball hawk. You've got the size, the speed. And year one, I thought he looked really good. So I think he was just kind of the victim of a volatile position where sometimes everything comes up crap. And I think he's going to be a really good player going forward.
It's one of those positions where you don't always trust the tape. You don't always trust the tape or the results or the production. You can regress positively or negative the other way. Yeah, you can trust it. I think you just have to work out what it means. And it seemed too implausible that one guy could be that bad randomly for a year. I'm going to go undersized defensive tackle Braden Fisk. We're back, baby. Back to the defensive tackle well. So Fisk, I mean, if you're a Rams fan, you might be like, oh, he already had a great rookie season. And look, when you watch Rams games, you definitely felt that Braden Fisk was playing, especially the second half of the season. You felt what you were getting from Jared Verse on the outside and Kobe Turner on the interior. But I think play for play, you're still left wanting a little bit more from Fisk, similar hold the point type of issues as other defensive tackles. But I think he's remember how athletic he was during the offseason process through the Senior Bowl, like really elevated himself as a fringe first rounder, goes in the second round to the Rams. They traded up to get him. There were enough flashes, but I think there's still even more there for Fisk to be a little bit more, say, dependable down to down, even in the run game, disruptive as a pass rusher. I think there's a little bit more there too. But he's also the type of guy who could have massive sack totals. Not that we would say, hey, 10 sacks, therefore he's good. But you might see that in a given year with everything around him. With now with Josiah Stewart being added to the mix, Byron Young, Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, and Fisk. He's very good on stunts and twists and a lot of the things that the Rams did to free him up because of that athleticism. So I'm just calling another step forward here for Braden Fisk for the Rams.
Yeah, I can see it.
San Francisco 49ers. Where are you going to go for breakouts here for the Niners?
Went with cornerback Renardo Green. Again, you could argue he's already broken out, but I sort of feel it's similar to the Garrett Williams thing. I think this is the year the reputation catches up with how he's already playing. He looked really good as a rookie last season. Second round pick for them out of Florida State, arguably the best sort of pure man corner in that draft. And his man coverage skills were really impressive. Like, I think he was up there with Terry and Arnold in terms of ability and mirror capacity and that kind of thing. I mean, he struggled a lot less than Terry and Arnold did with the transition. Unlike Arnold, who was penalized 8 times in the first 4 games, Green was penalized 3 times all season long, just had a much easier time of the transition. He was able to hit the ground running in that regard. And if he's able to continue that arc and, just improve, I mean, he could be a really good player for them this year.
I like that selection in Green. I agree with a lot there. And we've said a lot. There's a bunch of teams where we had, like the Titans, you and I both had their top 2 draft picks from last year. Because they kind of need them. The Niners need these guys, Renardo Green, and then the guy I'm going to take, Ricky Pearsall. They need Pearsall a little bit less. It's not like they're devoid of playmakers now, but there's certainly more targets to go around. Pearsall, we know, had the incident where he got shot before the season. Broke this all down in detail on our first-round review show a couple weeks ago. But, man, at Florida that last season, I always thought he was the fastest, best athlete on the field, sometimes the best player on the field. His final year there, I thought there was elements of the big playability that he showed, the Lions game, Monday Night Football last year. So I think they were just scratching the surface in using his big playability. I don't know if he ever becomes what Ayuk has become, which is more of a high volume target, or even Juwan Jennings, where those games where those dudes just take over. But I think Pearsall has this, hey, use him on the, try to attack down the field and he'll average 18 yards per reception for you. I think Pearsall has that ability as a big play threat, and we'll say this is the year he breaks out and gets there. We got one team left. Look at us, under 2 hours, all 32 team show.
We can do this. It's easy.
Unbelievable offseason form here. Seattle Seahawks up next. Who's your breakout for the Seahawks?
So my final time with the rookie, Torrey Horton. I just think the pathway to being good for him is so clear. Like, he fits so well into the offense that they have right now. Now they traded away DK Metcalf. They bring in Cooper Kupp. So you've got JSN, who already, is broken out into becoming a great receiver for them. You've got what Cooper Kupp can be, which, wherever he is on that spectrum in terms of what he's looked like as the kind of broken down version and how close back to his old self he can be. No matter where that lands with those two guys, the missing sort of skill set is the one Torrey Horton brings to the table. So I think Torrey Horton should step in right away and be that third receiver. I know Marquez Valdes-Scantling is there as well, but if Torrey Horton shows any signs of life in training camp, he should take that role from MVS and immediately become that third player in the offense. And then sky's the limit.
I think when you chose the rookies, you took it'd be like picking Puka Nacua as the breakout player before his rookie season, right? I mean, it's not a first rounder necessarily. It's an unexpected
surprise breakout.
Yeah, surprise. That's allowed here. I went with no surprise here. Defensive tackle, first rounder, Byron Murphy. I pretty much picked every defensive tackle that was drafted in the first 2 rounds last year as a breakout player. I think in part because so many of those guys disappointed me as rookies, and I still think not completely, but just inconsistency. So another guy that I thought was a little late, shooting his hands and technique wise was just a little bit off, but showed all that ability at Texas. And now that he gets a little bit more comfortable in year 2, and I think Byron Murphy could have a big year for Seattle. I also look at, they brought back a lot of depth on that defensive line. I think just the continuity that they have on the defensive line, plus DeMarcus Lawrence being added to the mix. I see the chat mentioning Derek Hall. I think our chat has been choosing Derek Hall breakouts for the last 3 years because his on the edge, because his power potential is incredible. But he hasn't really put it all together just yet. But I like Byron Murphy as the guy. I also think Seattle has a chance to have if DeMarcus Lawrence gets 80-90% of the way back to what he was with Dallas, I mean, Seattle could have one of the better defensive fronts in the NFL. That would be Leonard Williams coming off of his career year, by the way, 10 years plus into the league. DeMarcus Lawrence coming in, Byron Murphy in year 2 as a first rounder. I think there's a ton of potential for the Seahawks defensive line.
Yeah, Murphy at least flashed consistently last year. Relative to, last year, a lot of people, it was like Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton. People were split over those two. Murphy at least consistently flashed the ability both against the run and again as a pass rusher. Like Newton didn't even flash that much. That was the concerning thing for him and a couple of other guys. Murphy, at least you could say, all right, there's plays where it looked legit on, in every area. Now we just need to see that happening more often. I think it's a lot easier to sell yourself on Byron Murphy based off his first year than some of the other players.
And I know that Derek Hall has played just 2 years, Drake, but I said, hey, for three years of predicting the breakout, because we're allowed to predict rookies, right? So you predict the Hall breakout for 3 straight years. But no, I like the potential of that Seattle defensive line, especially if Murphy plays to his potential. Potential. How many times are you going to say potential? That's it. Good show.
Yeah.
32 teams, 32 breakout players. We'll hit at least 25% of them. Guaranteed.
Oh, yeah.
That I can guarantee. And we'll come back and brag about the predictions that we made. The good ones only. Especially when Daniel Jones, when they're talking about him making $45 million a year.
Clip that for if it happens.
That was fun. Look, it said sometimes when you get into the grind of the season and it's not grind like it's difficult, like, woe is me. It's just, it's fast, right? The season's fast, right? Every time Thursday shows up, it's like, oh, another week. It's tough to really get into the player tape as much, when you're just preparing for teams and it's very quarterback driven. So it's nice to get into the tape a little bit more in the offseason and dive deeper into some of these players.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you have a mug check?
No, I was just the espresso before today, so only the little dealy.
Nice. How'd you guys like the 9 a.m.? We're sitting here at 11 o'clock.
And we're done with the day.
We're done with the day. Don't have to work again until Monday at 9. It's great.
Where did you so we met each other socially the other day for the Taste of Cincinnati. How did you like that?
For the people who think that we hate each other, we met up off the field together. I enjoyed the Taste of Cincinnati. It's a little stressful with 4 kids. 4 kids.
4 kids.
There was a point when we were leaving where I only had 3 kids, which made it more
stressful. That would
stressful.
be more stressful if you only had 3.
Because I needed 4. Benny tends to wander a little bit. Our third. He's just like in La La Land walking around in a massive crowd. But it was a fun event. I've thought about going for like the last 8 years of living here, and I'm glad that we went. And I liked your plan of getting there early before the crowds.
That was necessary, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't. The only reason I went is because I saw a post of somebody posted a picture of these cinnamon roll beignets from some Louisiana-based foodery place. I was like, that feels like it's probably worth the trip just for those. I think arguably it was. Those were pretty awesome.
Yeah. I stole some of my kids. I got one for each kid. But yeah, managing the kids, the excitement, everything that they want, that's the biggest challenge at Taste of Cincinnati.
Well, you described it as like, it's basically like the Super Bowl media party, except you have to pay for the food. So yeah. For anyone that hasn't been, which I assume is most people, to like the media parties that they arrange. Now, number one, it varies in both quality and, how good it is based off the city, the particular host city it is. So the one, where was the farm one? Was that Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona.
That was amazing. Like they had this out in some farm place where it was just wide open acreage and you could wander and there were little huts everywhere. That was great. I think that was peak Super Bowl party. I missed the one that was in Universal Studios. That may have been even better, but I had to leave the day that was happening. The one last year, this most recent year in New Orleans is pretty good as well. The one in Vegas was a hellscape of awfulness. It was the worst. Anyway, the point is, generally speaking, it's like a showcase of all the different foods available in the host cities. So there's like a million of these little huts, and you just wander around. You get like a little like a tapas thing, a little nibble, a little sample of what that particular restaurant or whatever is offering up. So you just nibble free food all night, right? And a variety of free food. This was like that, except you have to pay for it. So it was like, right. The concept is great. Only each one of these little nibbles is costing you like $8.
Everything's between $5 and $10, basically.
Yeah.
But you got, the media party in New Orleans this year was fantastic. Houston years ago was great. But yeah, Taste of Cincinnati was fun. A lot of some good restaurants and different some barbecue and various things that were pretty good that I enjoyed.
Gringo Suave in the chat says, Taste of Cincinnati, everything topped with chili. Now, that wasn't the case. There was, however, a coffee, a cold brew or a iced coffee that was apparently Cincinnati chili flavored coffee
Yeah.
that I couldn't bring myself to get even for science, but that sounded awful.
My wife was close to getting it. I was shocked because she's pretty basic, right? It's like, I like my coffee with the milk in it. She doesn't get crazy lattes or anything. Like, she gets lattes, but it's all like milk, right? Simple stuff.
Yeah.
She was very close to getting it. I was shocked, but I think I talked her out of it. The Cincinnati chili flavored cold brew.
Dude, we went to Graders the other night. For scout, I can't remember. Scouts did something or other. We went to Graders afterwards, right? So, and I'm back doing this calorie restriction starvation gig to lose the 15 pounds that I lost and then put back on again. I'm like setting. So I had like 200 or something left for the day. So I'm like, oh, I can't get Graders. I'll get a coffee. So I was like, and I'll get not only that, I will get a coffee and I'll get a cappuccino. Be extravagant, right? Even though I know it was like late in the evening, you're not supposed to get a cappuccino afternoon or whatever. For the Italians, I was like, screw it. I'm going to get a cappuccino. That's like 200 calories and I'm done for the day. So I was like, I'll have a cappuccino. And this kid, everyone that works in Graders is like 18 years old. This kid goes, starts making the coffee, takes him like 15 minutes. I don't know what the hell he was doing with it. Anyway, hands me this thing. I take a sip out of this. I'm like, this is like pure sugar. There's like this thing on its own must have 800 calories in it. It is like nothing but syrup. It's like syrup and then instead of, you know, a coffee with a pump of syrup, it's like syrup with a pump of coffee in it. I'm like, what? It's one of those things where on the menu it's like cappuccino 90 calories or whatever. I'm like, it doesn't mention the addition of sugary syrup anywhere in it.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't know if I've told the story before, but like the first time I really started to drink coffee was when I was 24. I had drank coffee before in my life, but like really got addicted to it was when I was 24 pitching in Montana, and it added 2 to 3 miles an hour that night. Like, I had 2 coffees before the game, started throwing harder. The next year, my teammates and I would drink these terrible like pregame coffees with just a pile of sugar and the coffee mate. Like, it was awful. Like, it just was terrible. But that was what I was, the 07 season. That's what I was drinking. And I think the night that I pitched in front of the Giants scout, who eventually signed me, I needed to get in the right headspace, energy space. So I had like 2 of those things, and it is just pure like cake, sugar, coffee mate, awful. But I was pumping 91 to 93, Sam, and got signed. So it was a performance enhancer for me.
Seriously, I don't know if people know that enough, that like caffeine is a legitimate performance enhancing drug that is not illegal, right? It's one of these, and I think you would be surprised to learn how much caffeine professional athletes ingest before, you know, doing whatever they do. Like, I was listening to a podcast, you know, track and field, talking about like an Olympian, and she was talking about like how much caffeine she needed to like take during that day and timing it correctly so that you're like wired to the gills while you're doing your heptathlon or whatever. Like, those guys get absolutely like nuked to beyond oblivion with caffeine because it's the one thing you can take that does affect your performance and is not illegal.
It's so tough.
It's wild.
I mean, for those who hadn't heard the story, I like telling it because it's fun. But that whole year, I was throwing 89 to 91. And then I drank a coffee before the game just to stay warm because it started to get cold. It was like late in the season. And my teammates convinced me I was going to crash by the time I had to pitch 6 innings later or whatever. I was like, oh no. And like, of course that wasn't true. So I had another one and I was out of my mind. I went in and finished the 6th inning. I finished the game, pitched 3+ innings. And I went from 89 to 91 to 91 to 93. So legit like 2 miles an hour on my average. I almost started a brawl. Like, I was wired, man. I was out of my mind, but I pitched awesome, and I've been addicted to coffee ever since. But you can't get back to that same feeling. You know, it's really tough to keep the caffeine intake that high and get the same results.
I used to drink coffee. I used to need sugar in it, right? Not a lot. Like the amount that kid put in my coffee was never on my on my radar, but I would have like a sugar in the coffee. And I started when we were forced to go full time into the office by Neil, right? Everyone's in there 8:30 to 5:30 every day. I was like, all right, if I'm going to be drinking daily coffee, I can't have a spoonful of sugar in it every time. Like that's awful for me. So I'm going to have to basically force myself to start drinking it black. That's the easiest way of doing this. There's no extra calories in it. So I just essentially weaned myself onto full-time black coffee. And then you got Austin Galen there making this like coffee treacle mix, like the strongest coffee in the history of the world in the communal pot. Yes. The one man who needed coffee less than any other human that's ever existed. He's already like wired to the gills just as a default setting. He used to make like the strongest coffee in the history of the world for the office, for everyone to collectively partake in.
I love it. I also admitted years ago, Sam, on the show, if Kenny Glenn, if any of my floor mates on the second floor of the office, if any of them are listening, they had no idea that I snuck a couple extra grams of coffee into the pot on Fridays. Bold brew Friday, whatever unit we were using to make the coffee. It took 70 grams, I think, for the whole pot, and I would throw 72 or 73 in there, and they didn't know. They didn't know that I gave a little extra bold brew on Friday. Crazy.
Well, the office is funny because so coffee, like there's a spectrum of snobbery, right? And this, I think, exists in wine and, cigars and all this other crap as well. But the coffee in particular, there are some people that are perfectly happy with Folgers, like Mark Mitchell, right? You just grab the tub, you scoop it in, you throw the water in, you're good to go. That's coffee, right? There are other people who need to grind their own beans, who have to do it by the gram, who need the water at a specific like degree temperature, and all of these 15 things all need to be in the exact sequence every single time. Otherwise, you ruin the coffee, right? And we had each one of those people in the office and the whole spectrum. So you were dealing with the coffee snobs that had to have the exact gram. Yep. We had Austin out there just like just hooning a chunk of this stuff into the thing. I mean, like, dude, that's like 4 times the amount of coffee that's supposed to be in there.
Oh, it's great. Good time. Yeah. Miss the office sometimes. Miss those office days. We'll be in our studio soon, by the way, just so you know. Been working from home here since the Super Bowl, and we appreciate everybody for being a part of it. But studio's coming soon. 33rd team. Check the mic. Coming soon.
I might drive out there tomorrow. Take a look at how they're going. See what the state of the place is like.
You are? You're gonna go?
I might have a look.
You should go check on them. All right, that's it for us today. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, new time, Thursday mornings, 9 a.m. So throughout the offseason, 9 a.m. Monday, 9 a.m. on Thursday. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Monday, 9 a.m. More. Check the mic.